Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Londonderry Town Council meeting. We are going to start a little bit early so that the Town Council can move into a non-public session. Please all rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain standing. It was brought up at the last meeting about moments of silence, so we'll have moments of appreciation. Our moment of appreciation tonight is for our first responders, for the police department, for the fire department, for the public works department. And also keep in mind, we have 700 employees over at the school. There's almost 1,000 people who serve this community. This moment is for them. It's for their appreciation for what they do for this community. Thank you. All right, I'll accept the motion to move into non-public under RSA-A:3, Part 2, Part M.
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Chair, pursuant to RSA 91A:3, Section 2M, I moved in a non-public session for the purposes of the consideration of whether to disclose minutes of a non-meeting session due to the changes in circumstances under paragraph 3. However, any vote on whether to disclose minutes shall take place in public session.
Roll call vote.
Take Holmes, aye.
I, Chad Franz.
Aye, John Farrell.
Hi, Jim Butler.
Hi, Ron Dunn.
All right, folks, we're going to step out for probably about 10 or 15 minutes, and we'll be back. I'll accept the motion to come out of non-public.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote. Ted?
I, Ted Combs.
I, Chad Franz.
Aye, John Farrell.
Hi, Jim Butler.
Hi, Ron Dunn.
We were out of non-public. I will accept a motion regarding the non-public session minutes.
So, Mr. Chair, I move to unseal the minutes of the following 16 town council non-public sessions as listed. 1:23:23 non-public session as redacted. 10:17:22 non-public session as redacted. 9:26:22 non-public session as redacted. 8:29:22 non-public session. 6:20:22 non-public session. 6/6/2022 non-public session. 4/11/22 non-public session. 1:28:22 non-public session. 1:10/2022 non-public session. 10/18/21 non-public session as redacted on the issue of tax deeds. 10/18/21 non-public session on the issue of the assistant town manager's compensation. 6/7/21 non-public session. 12/21/20 non-public session. 11/19/2018 non-public session. 10/2/2017 non-public session, and 6/5/2017 non-public session as redacted.
Motion on the floor. I'll accept a second.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Those minutes are unsealed. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to move from hearing to public comment. Is there any public comment this evening?
Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. Last time I was here, I had asked if we could start recording council votes by roll call, according to section 3.6D in the town charter, and I'm happy to see that we've started recording town council votes by roll call. First time in 16 years I've actually seen that. Second one, I'd asked about the minutes that were officially read into the record at the last meeting, and I was told 3 times that the meetings, that the new rules for public comment were adopted in 2017. I did a little bit of research, and they weren't adopted in 2017. They were actually adopted on April 18th, 2018 by councilors Farrell, Green, Butler, Dolan, and Combs. They haven't been re-adopted, as far as I can tell, since 2018. But the charter, section 3.2A, requires that within 10 days of the election, you meet to reorganize, appoint chair, vice chair, etc., take your oaths of office, and adopt the rules of the council, if they're different than the town charter. Now, it's interesting, on 4/18, when these rules were adopted, Councilor Dolan at the time said that the rules were, quote, aspirational and unenforceable. He said that because there was a meeting in 2017, which a number of you were actually at, that went through how to conduct meetings effectively. And there was a whole section on minutes. There was actually a section on non-public meeting minutes as well, which is interesting that we've unsealed everything. The other thing I'll point out is for months we've been told that public comment is limited to 3 minutes, but could be extended. But the rules read at the last meeting said they were 5 minutes. You're required to adopt the rules. They've never been adopted, so I don't believe these rules since 2018 are in effect until you vote to adopt them. School board did a very similar thing. They voted at their first meeting to re-adopt all policies and procedures from the former school board, because boards cannot encumber following boards to apply to any rules other than what is in the charter or stated by RSA. That's the first one. The second one, or the third one, I guess, there's a letter to the editor in the Londonderry Times submitted by the town manager, and I'm just going to read some of it. He thanked people for the election and the snow and all that, which commendable effort. It was miserable weather. But he said he wanted to elaborate on something because lately this reality has been obscured by a handful of people who opt to explain decisions with which they disagreed by suggesting Londonderry public servants are not acting in good faith. I do not want to focus or even respond to what these people are saying. He then went on to say, but unfortunately, the loudest voices at this moment seek chaos as an end in itself, are employing conspiracy theories, name-calling, and misinformation to drown everyone out. He went on to say we need reasonable middle to fill the room, both literally and figuratively, because if we don't, Londonderry's most divisive voices surely will. I read that and almost fell off my chair. As far as I know, most of the divisive voices, which I'm probably one of them, are not spreading conspiracy theories. Most of this information has come from 91A articles that were requested. There is no name calling, and the most divisive people, we have a right to speak at public comment. Now, going back to the 2017 meeting and running effective meetings, the interesting thread there was most of the people, some of which are still on boards today, wanted to know how do we stop people from speaking at public comment? How can we shut them down if we don't like what they're saying? So you might want to go back to the 2017 meeting and review what was said, because this is unacceptable.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, everyone. Sherry Farrell, your Londonderry Town Clerk. I just wanted to remind everyone dog registration month is here at the end of April. Please come in, register your dogs, let your neighbors know and your friends. It's really for your safety, your pet's safety, the community's safety. And if you know, sadly, if your pet has passed away or you've moved, if you could let us know. We have 5,500 dogs in town that we try to register every year. Grew a lot during COVID, but if you could just reach out and let us know. We send out our hot pink little note cards to let everyone know. That way it'll stop, one, the expense of those, and also you'll stop, you won't get those cards and reminders anymore. Also, we have a rabies clinic coming up, and that's going to be on April 29th. It's open to all communities throughout New Hampshire. Anyone who needs to get their dog or cat registered, they can come in, get the vaccination. Dr. Myrna is donating her time and the vaccinations again from Londonderry Animal Clinic, and we're grateful for that. And on a real positive note, this year she's asked that all of the monies raised go to our Londonderry band. So they have their big trip coming up to England, so that's very exciting. So that's it. If you could help us spread the word, that would be great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And kindness, I think, is the word that I just think of in general, just kindness and looking for the positive and trying to celebrate all these good people in this room and, people that are out there. Come and share the positive a little bit too, because this is a great community. And I really thank you, Mike, you, Kelly, Ron, Jim, my husband, Chad, Ted, for all the hard work and effort you put in. And I think sometimes we get so caught up on the negative that we forget that this is an incredible community. I've been here since the 60s, and I literally thank God every day for all of you and this community and that we're here. So, kindness.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else for public comment?
Sean Faber, 73 Old Nashua Road. I would have said this last meeting, but there was a lot of people, and I wanted to give them their space. But I just wanted to say it was a good, positive experience running for town council. I want to congratulate Ron. I want to congratulate Ted. And this is just a great part being involved in this town, and I want to continue doing that. So I just wanted to make that positive statement, and thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else for public comment? Yes?
Good evening. Ann Champa, 28 Wedgewood Drive. I know the topic of pickleball is going to be coming up later, but it's not a public hearing, so I expected this would be the only time I can mention something about it. With the first paragraph, it says, pickleball has become a popular sport to play for people of all ages, and it would benefit the residents of Londonderry to evaluate the community's interest and concerns regarding pickleball in Londonderry. As you remember, we voted on this a number of years ago, and the vote was for against it. So I'm not sure why it's coming up without a revote of the public before
Well,
we spend any money or do any engineering studies or anything like that.
Well, it's very simple. At the last meeting, the consensus of the council was to investigate it. What we said is that there was a task force for a dog park. People asked us to look into it. There's no dog park. There was a task force for a town pool. We investigated it. There's no town pool. So what people are asking is for us to do a deeper investigation to find out what the interest level is and what it may or may not be. We find that to be reasonable. It doesn't mean anything's going to happen. It means we're going to ask people to volunteer for a task force. They're going to look into it. We're not going to spend a penny and come back to the council with their recommendation. Their recommendation maybe is, you know what, we think we ought to give this another try on the ballot. Because no means no, that's only for 1 year. If they come back and they may say, you know what, there's really not interest to do it here. There's plenty of facilities here for pickleball now. We're going to give the community an opportunity to go back and take a look at it a second time. Do a little bit more homework. Do a little bit more investigation. And if that's what they want, if that's what the community wants, if that's what they want to vote for, that's great. If it's not what they want, then it won't move forward, much like the dog park and the pool.
So when we vote on voting day, put our ballots in and vote, it only applies for 1 year?
No means no for 1 year. That's why the auditoriums come back twice.
Oh, okay. Thank you very much.
I just have one thing real quick, just
Okay.
specifically regarding the voting. That was for the expenditure of funds to pay for an engineering company to do work.
Right.
This is, as the chairman said earlier, this is free. So that's what the vote was on, was the expenditure of funds.
So there won't be any engineering done with this vote or anything else?
This is just to establish the task force
It's
at
up,
this moment.
it's up them to go out, ask the questions, solicit the community, figure out what the needs are, and then come back and say, here's what we've learned. Much like the task force was for the energy task force, which turned into a committee.
Okay. Well, thank you very much.
That just happens to be our tool and our mechanism.
Thank you very much for explaining that. I didn't realize it was only good for 1 year. I've never heard that before.
I only learned it from the town manager, who reminded us at the last meeting, no means no, and it's 1 year, correct?
Absolutely.
Could I hear him what he said?
Sure. Want to tell her what you said
Mr.
again?
Malagoody, would you please?
Yes, I'm happy to address this, and it's probably a good time for me to address what I heard from Councilor Dunn with similar concerns about, gosh, the people voted on this, and yet, I heard you meaning me at the last meeting talking about the possibility of expending funds, and it is exactly correct that we are, based on the failure of the petition warrant article last year, prohibited from spending money on pickleball in Londonderry for 1 year. What that also does is it would prevent us from taking advantage of a grant to spend the same amount of money on pickleball work. Because the budget law doesn't draw a distinction between money raised through taxation and money raised in that fashion. It's the appropriation that the budget law is concerned about, and it says after the failure of a warrant article, no means no for that budget year. But as Chairman Farrell pointed out, that does not bind, and as I think somebody else, Mr. Douglas pointed out in public comment, that one council can't encumber a future council. Similarly, one vote of the town is good for 1 year. It doesn't encumber future action of the town. And so my comments were very much premised around the idea of we've heard, understanding that there was a pretty clear vote that was taken a year ago this past election. But we've also heard from a lot of folks in the community who feel the other way. And the very modest step that was taken was to form a task force to evaluate options. And my job as town manager is to give the town council and the community options. And one of those options is, if it's decided that we want to go back down this path, how to do it. Do we go back out on the ballot? Do we look for grant money that maybe wouldn't require us to go back out on the ballot? It's really my job to identify options so that people who have the expertise on the pickleball task force can make recommendations to the town council, and the town council can vet those recommendations.
You said,
And in the last year, and we've learned that hundreds of thousands of dollars have been granted around the state to build pickleball courts. So let's go find out.
can you slide in a bocce court for me too?
You can have a bocce court task force if you like.
Thank you. But you said the budget year. Now, doesn't that go to June?
July 1st.
July,
Correct.
so why?
July
June
1 to
30th.
June 30th.
Yes.
So the budget year for that vote ends June 30th.
Right, so why are we, isn't it still under the no premise now then?
Not spending a penny. All we're doing is investigating.
Correct.
Okay,
Correct. We can study, we can talk about it, we can look at it, but we can't spend a penny on pickleball before July 1st.
Okay, and does spending a penny mean employees' use of their time?
This is something that came up in the last meeting. I think that,
I'm
you know,
sorry, I missed it.
it's a great question, and I think that that you know, we should give full effect to the vote, which was that we should stay away from pickleball, devoting municipal resources to pickleball for that period of time, and that's why I was uncomfortable having the town engineer, you know, doing a lot of work to evaluate pickleball. I don't know legally whether that the law doesn't address that specifically, but we want to make sure that the voters' choice is given full effect, and I think that it's a great question.
And to give you some sort of an idea, by the time we establish one, by the time we put one in place, by the time they have their first meeting, it will probably be June 1st. So nothing will probably move all that quickly.
Not that the minutia matters to me anyways,
Sure, of course it does.
but thank you for explaining it, and we'll see what happens then.
And the other thing I was going to point out was, yeah, so Councilor Dunn had raised with me some concerns about, you know, the town manager, you know, using the budget to identify potential funds. That's not something, I'm not looking to spend money on pickleball now or before we all hear back from the pickleball task force. And ultimately, the task force, I think it's just worth remembering, makes recommendations to the town council, and the town council can disagree with that if they want to. They can agree with it, some or all of it. But this is not something that I'm, you know, looking to do on my own, divorced from those two bodies.
I thought I had heard in the past that you'd find the $6,000 or dollars for it. I thought that was mentioned.
Right, and that's what I'm referring to, is inartful perhaps on my part, not to bring the timing of that into it. But we have a task force. It's important that we wait and see what the task force has to say, and that the town council vets that. And so I'm not looking to spend any money on pickleball until those two things happen.
Okay, have you already picked a committee? You said we have a committee?
We don't have one yet. It's on the agenda tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Who knows? It might fail. The council may not vote for it. We don't know. We haven't gotten that far.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Jonathan Esposito, 5 Shelley Drive in Londonderry. I just want to make a couple observations to the town council. I understand that this is not a Q&A or a debate session. I was very interested to see several updates to the town council rules of order on the londonderry.org website. I did attend the reorganizational meeting on March 27th, I believe it was.
Please stop. Has there been any updates to any rules of order that you know of?
No, we uploaded the town council public comment rules at the request of a citizen, but I'm not aware of any substantive changes to the rules.
So
So- My
we've made no
apologies, Mr. Chairman.
changes.
Understand, so there have been, I understand that you have not made any, or you state that you have not made any changes to the rules. Allow me to be specific. There have been several changes to the links, as Mr. Malaguti noted, on the town website, separate from just the rules of public comment being uploaded. There was also a scanned copy of the town charter that apparently was uploaded in place of town council rules of order. So irrespective of whether or not we are speaking about wider rules of order by the town council or the narrower field of public comment, I did attend the reorganizational session, the last town council meeting that we had, and I did not hear any motion or any vote to adopt any rules of order for the town council. I reviewed the meeting minutes and I did not see any tally vote adopting any rules of order, so I don't know why any rules whatsoever would be listed on the town website, because no vote occurred, according to the town charter. That reorganization meeting within 10 days of the election would have been the time frame that you would have had a motion and a vote to adopt new rules of order, because, as Mr. Malaguti stated in the previous matter, the prior sessions of the town council cannot encumber the new one. Specifically regarding the rules of public comment, you had referenced them at the reorganizational meeting, Mr. Chairman, but there was no vote there either. So I don't know, I'm not to understand that we have really any rules of public comment. I'm to understand that 3 sitting members of the town council, Mr. Butler, Mr. Combs, and Mr. Farrell, did attend a briefing given by Stephen Buckley, Esquire, from the New Hampshire Municipal Association in 2017, in which they very narrowly defined what scope of public comment you can limit. The rules that you gave, Mr. Chairman, do seem to exceed the bounds that were defined by Stephen Buckley, Esquire, at that 2017 briefing, but further, they're still 2018 rules. There was still no vote to adopt them as per the town charter. So I'm not sure that there are really any rules of public comment outside of setting the time and place and perhaps giving the 5-minute rule for the decency of public comment. There should be no such rule that I need to simply speak to matters on the agenda, or that I can't identify town officials by name, especially when we see a sign on the door that says, "Please be patient, the town secretary's office is understaffed." I'm to understand that any land use department that we now have is gutted as well, from an email that I received today. I understand that Mr. Malaguti is probably not, that I have to address the town council chairman, but I wonder if Mr. Malaguti would have the opportunity to respond regarding the resignation of the staff member that was the secretary, and who, aside from Assistant Town Manager Kelly Karen, is covering really any duties from land use. That's all I have, folks. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I would certainly welcome any response from the town council, but I understand this isn't Q&A. Thank you.
I'm back. Glenn Douglas, 6 Overlook Ave. There were changes to what was posted on the website.
We didn't say that there weren't changes to what was posted on the website. What we said was there was no changes to any council rules. Now, there was an error done on the website, which, thank you, you pointed it out and it was corrected.
Okay, this is public comment. This isn't listen to you, just saying.
Sir, I'm going to correct you when you're wrong. So please go ahead.
The FY12 rules that were posted are different than the FY12 rules that were posted several weeks ago, because I went through them today. And I actually sent an email to the town council on Friday and said, why did the FY12 rules get removed? Didn't get a response. I did get a response from the administrative secretary that said it was a mistake, but I put them back. Well, what you put back isn't what was there, because they're different. The content is different. So I don't know who's correcting who, but whatever.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Seeing no further public comment is closed.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to bring something up. It's concerning our minutes of meetings. Over the past 6 to 12 months, I've watched people in the audience, I've read newspaper articles talk about transparency, mistrust, conspiracy. corruption, and it goes on. All negative. What I think we should do from now on is enter the video as part of the minutes of the meeting, so when someone accuses us of not doing something, which is fine, everyone can see on the video what's going on and who said what, and we can correct some of these problems. So I believe that we should enter the video into the minutes of the meeting, and if people have problems with what was said, or go back to the video, it's part of the minutes of the meeting. I've had that minutes, some information isn't on the minutes of the meeting. Well, guess what? We're not in court, and we don't have a stenographer doing the minutes. So I think this is a reasonable change. And you talk about transparency in meetings, can't get any better than that. So I think that's what we should do. Now, to Mr. Douglas's point, it seems we have a problem with the council. Do me a favor, go home, tell us how to solve the problem. Tell us how to solve, no, pardon me?
Sir, out of order.
All I'm asking you is.
We are closed
you bring
in
up-
public
You
comment.
bring up some points, and you have every right to, no doubt about it. Mr. Esposito brings up points, no doubt about it. Come with a solution, come with what you would like to see us do. I'm open for that. Because I'm tired of listening to what I consider, whether you like it or not, a small group of people. These people up here have to take the concerns of over what, 26,000 people in town? 17,000 voters? Not a group of 1,000 or 1,500. So when we do some things, it's not all about the people that come and constantly talk about whatever they want to talk about.
You're out of order.
Well, and here's another thing. Some people don't like the way that Chairman Farrell runs a meeting. But I'll tell you what.
Out of order.
What? We don't go into recess. He controls the meeting and he does a good job. And it's a tough job to do. You don't see us going into, our meetings are pretty damn controlled. Not like some other bodies of government that had problems, and every time there was an issue, the only way they resolved it was, let's take a recess. We don't do that here. He runs a good meeting, and I back him. Whether you like it or not, I back John Farrell. And if you guys have problems, next time we have a meeting, bring it up. Let's look at what the problems are, and tell me how you want to solve it. Don't keep coming up and just blasting us. I don't have a problem doing it. Maybe you didn't elect me, but other people elect me to say what I have to say. And I am saying it. And I will stand up. This isn't an easy position. Ron Dunn's going to find out real quick. It's not an easy position. We run a good meeting. And it's all because of John Farrell. And not because he's my friend, not because I've known him for 10 years, because he runs a good meeting. He knows how to run a good meeting. He doesn't let it go amok. So come back, please. Come back with some suggestions and tell me what you want to do. And let's look at it at that point.
I'm assuming this is still not.
Out of order. Out of order.
You don't want a good meeting, sir. Good night.
Out of order.
What a joke. I'll say it. And believe me, I sit up here and I listen to some people in the audience when they show up. They talk about disrespectful, this gentleman's disrespectful. Watch some of the video and you'll see other people jump up, talk out of order. We get nothing done. It's too negative. We've got to get by all this crap, excuse me, and move on in a positive way.
Accept the motion to open a public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. I'm open a public hearing for two pieces, Resolution 2023-04 and 2023-05. This is acceptance of unanticipated revenue. One is for the search and rescue grant, training grant. The other one is for the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Strategy Grant. Who will present?
Mr. Chairman, LPD is here and is prepared to speak on the SOU grant for $61,000. I will just tee that up by saying that, the SOU unit that Londonderry participates in they're highly trained, they're well-equipped, just like Londonderry Police Department, and it's important that we keep them that way. The second grant for $75,920 is an Energy Efficiency and Conservation Block Grant through the U.S. Department of Energy. This is a grant that Londonderry it receives based on a population relative to other municipalities in New Hampshire. And some of the items that this can be used on is audits, energy retrofits, building codes and inspections, conservation efforts, traffic signals and street lighting. I've already had a conversation with the chairman of the Utilities Committee and suggested that the expertise of that group would be of some assistance to the town in determining how to allocate those dollars. For tonight's purposes, all that's occurring is we are accepting that $75,000 grant with no decision being made as to how that money should be spent. It would be my intention to take that back to the town council for input and a decision once we hear from the Utilities Committee.
So if I understand what you're saying correctly, is you're recommending our brand-new Utilities Committee has to come together fairly quickly to figure out the best way to spend $75,000 in the community and make a recommendation for that.
Correct.
That's great. I mean, I'm really interested to see what they're gonna have to say. That is great. Great idea. Are there any questions? Ladies and gentlemen, this is a public hearing. Are there any questions from the public regarding these two items? With that, I'll accept the motion to accept the unanticipated revenue for resolutions 2023-04 and 2023-05.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, and we'll accept those. I'll accept the motion to close the public hearing.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, and the public hearing is closed. Next item for business. Next item for business is Source Water Protection Grant, Environmental Risk Assessment Report. Emily DeFranco from CEI Engineering. Emily, how are you?
Hi, good. How are you guys doing tonight?
Thank you.
Good. All right, well, I'm Emily DeFranco. I'm a scientist with Comprehensive Environmental. We are a consulting company that was hired by the town to help with this. It's a grant. Basically, this is the outcome of the grant. I will keep it brief, but I was here a couple years ago. This is where this began. In 2019, the town of Londonderry hired us to do a water resource management protection plan for the town of Londonderry. And so that really was, we were looking at basically an updated water resources data report. So we're looking at your drinking water, your groundwater, your surface water, what are your existing and do you have any potential threats to surface and groundwater supplies, that type of thing. And part of that report was to provide recommendations to figure out what else you could do to protect water resources in the town. One of the recommendations of the plan was to conduct an assessment of septic systems, and that was what this next project was, basically. So that was the background. So I have been here before, and we were talking about this a few years ago. So in the town of Londonderry, you have about 6,500 or so developed parcels. Of those, only about 693 are connected to public sewer. The rest are on septic systems. So about 90% of your town relies on septic systems. So anything in green in the map, septic systems, the brown is the sewer parcels. So just to give you a background on that. Very brief, why we care about septic systems and what happens when septic systems are working well. They work well. That basically you have all the sewage from your house is discharged to a tank, the solids settle out, and they get discharged to a leach field. And when that's in working order, the soil has the ability to filter all of the stuff that's coming out in your effluent. The bacteria in the soil can break it down. So by the time it makes it to your groundwater, that that effluent's pretty clean. And that's what we want to see happen. When a septic system is maintained and replaced as it should be, so when it's pumped every couple years, when it's replaced every 20 or so years, that's the system works. That's designed to work. When it doesn't work well, that groundwater, if that soil doesn't have the ability to filter that groundwater and treat it, it ends up in your groundwater supply. And a lot of your residents in town rely on drinking water from wells in their backyard. So it's basically from the same place. So we want to make sure that that water supply is clean, essentially. So that's the background. We care about the well side of things more than anything. So that's sort of a little bit of background. And in 2022, we helped the town apply for a source water protection grant from New Hampshire DES to take a look at your septic systems as part of the recommendation from that earlier report. You received that grant, and these were basically the things that we were looking at. So the first was to figure out what parts of town were more at risk environmentally for having failing septic systems. So I'll talk about that in a minute. Then from that, to create a septic system database, so some type of electronic tracking system, which you don't have, most towns don't have, so not just Londonderry, but hardly anybody does because they're all, on their septic systems. And because this grant was a source water protection grant, we were only able to do that in source water protection areas in the town. So source water protection area is a land area that drains to a drinking water resource. So, any place that drains to water that Pennachuck Waterworks takes up, that would be considered part of the source water protection area. Or if there's sort of like a wellhead area that's protected around certain community wells as well. And then the last piece of the grant was to conduct outreach based on the results. So I'm going to go through each piece. The first piece was this environmental risk assessment, and we actually were able to do this for the whole town. This is a GIS exercise or a mapping exercise, so it's just as easy to do it for the whole town as it is for just the source water protection areas. So what we were looking at there is where in town are there soil limitations for septic systems to be able to function as they should. Are there areas where, the depth to groundwater or the depth to bedrock is shallower than other parts of town? Are there areas of town that are more sloped than others, which could be an issue? Also, environmental factors we were looking at. How close are parcels, specific parcels, to a water body or wetland? Are they in a FEMA flood zone? That type of thing. So we take all of those things and put them together, and we're able to come up with these 3 tiers of, which parcels would be more at risk to failure just based on soil and environmental conditions. Not anything to do with the septic system itself, just the land that it's put in. So tier 1, well, basically all of these are if they have a septic system, they're gonna be in this, assessment. The tier 1 properties would be the ones that are the most at risk. So they are in limited soils for one reason or the other, depending on the soil type. They're in a FEMA flood zone, and they are within 100 feet of a water body. So that's tier 1. Tier 2 would be everything except they're not in the FEMA flood zone. They still have limited soils. They're still close to a water body. And then tier 3 would just be that they're on a septic system, but they don't have any of those other things, which is just a way to divide them so that we can prioritize where we might care about thinking about what we might need to do about septic systems. So of those parcels that are on septic systems, you had about 1,370 that were located in a tier 1 or tier 2 zone. Most of them are in the tier 3, which means that the soils aren't limited. They're not that close to a water body, which is all good when you're looking at, are they more at risk of failure just because of where they are? And so that's when the second part, when that source water protection grant kicked in, and we were able to look at the tier 1 and tier 2 parcels that were just within those source water protection areas. So this is just the breakdown of that. This is all in the report that you guys will be sent at some point from the town as well. But these are the different drinking water sources, and we had to sort of parse out who we could be looking at. And so we're just looking at the things in the orange circle there. So it's a subset of a subset, if you want to think of it that way. So what is that? So what does that look like? The septic system inventory. Currently, this town, as well as every other town in New Hampshire, except maybe a very small handful, have no current method to track septic system installation and replacement, except for what you see in that picture, just within the record in the building department or in the planning department. That's very normal. Most of the time, it's just a slip that's in the in the file that might have a septic replacement date, or it could just be scrawled on a building plan, that type of thing. And that's very normal, but we have no way to be able to track it electronically at all. The state does keep records if an application has been submitted to the state. And so we have some, we're looking at those as well. So really what we did in this was those tier 1 and tier 2 properties within the source water protection area, we developed a septic system database essentially by going through the municipal records, physically going through the municipal records and entering the date that the home was built, if there was a date of replacement for septic systems. And we also went through the state records to see, what do we get? And this is sort of the beginning of a tool that the town could use if it gets continued to be done town-wide. When somebody is reviewing a building application, or if somebody applies to have their, put an addition on their home, it's an easy lookup instead of trying to go through the municipal records to be able to see when things were replaced. If somebody wants to buy a new home, it's a lot easier for them to find out when the last time the septic system was replaced. And also it can become the basis for future regulations down the road. And I'll talk about how other communities have done that if that ever becomes an issue. So this is not something that you should be able to see, but I just wanted you to be able to see. This is basically what it looks like. It's a very simple inventory that can get added to by town staff. And we've had meetings with the town staff about how they're going to update this as they get septic records and what their process might be. But essentially, this is really what we looked at. We looked at 736 parcels of those records, basically. And most of them had a record of replacement or just a date that the septic system was installed. But this is really the sort of the crux of this. Most of those properties were replaced over 20 years ago, or there was no later record of replacement. Septic systems really don't last much longer than 20 years, and that's if you're maintaining them. Maintaining them basically means you're getting them inspected, you are getting them pumped every couple years, but a lot of people, not just in Londonderry, but everywhere, some people don't even know they have a septic system. That's just that's just true. And so when I see things like that, that is also not an abnormal spread of replacement. It makes you concerned about, how are they actually functioning as they should? And when you have homeowners that are relying on drinking or groundwater for their drinking water, there becomes an issue, a potential for a public health issue if those things are not addressed over time. So the recommendations from the report are, make sure people know about the fact that they have a septic system, especially in the tier 1 and tier 2 neighborhoods where they may be more at risk for failure just based on the soil type and the environmental conditions. Things like presentations to the town council, to the Conservation Commission, and there are existing septic system information brochures and flyers that the town already has that could be distributed to those tier 1 and tier 2 neighborhoods very easily now that it's in, an Excel spreadsheet. Basically, it tells you the properties. They could get mailed out with tax bills or however you'd want to do it. But you basically have everything you need there, except it would just need to go out to people. And that information would be about, you need to maintain it, you need to pump your system, this is how often, this is how to do it, this is who to call, that type of information. The other thing that you could do is complete the septic inventory for the rest of the town, rest of the town, outside of the source water protection areas, outside of the tier 1 and 2 levels. If you could get it done for the whole town, that is something that, there's still about 5,000 properties that we did not look at. With just the scope of this grant that we had. That's something that the town, the members of the town that I've been working with feels that they could complete in-house now that they sort of have the infrastructure set up. It wouldn't take them much. We had most of the municipal records pulled by an intern this summer. So it really is just work that could just sort of get built up over time, but it would provide the town with a good resource to be able to really take a look at septic systems and actually being able to, to track what's happening. And this was down the road, but one thing that some towns have done are considered regulatory changes, especially in areas where there's a concern. So most towns, including Londonderry, follow state regulations for septic system installation, which is, a setback of 75 feet or so from surface waters, The leach fields have to be built about 4 feet above the seasonal high water table. And basically, the main requirement is if it's found to be failing, then it has to get replaced. The found to be failing thing is pretty hard to find because it's a septic system. So those are the basic regulations that exist. Londonderry follows those, as do most towns. A few towns have changed their regulations because towns can put whatever type of septic system regulations they want that could get passed within a town. Most of the ones that I have experience with are because of, like Meredith, New Hampshire has lakes. They have a lot of algae blooms that have been shown to come from septic systems. So they had a health ordinance pass which requires an evaluation of all septic systems within 250 feet of the lake. And basically, you have to get your system evaluated, and then you get an operational permit, basically, from the town to have a septic system within that area of the lake. That's just one example. Another one is in Rye, New Hampshire on the seacoast. Their issue is beach closures, and that comes from bacteria from septic systems, which they found that over time, over the many, many different studies that were done. They put in some more stringent design criteria. They also have a very high groundwater table, so they couldn't stick with the state 4 feet, to the seasonal high water table. And they also put a pump out ordinance in place that requires all residents within certain areas of town, so mostly anywhere near an impaired water body, to get their septic system pumped every 3 years. And they were able to do that because they had that inventory that you now have the beginnings of in place. It's sort of a way to get that moving along. It's a way to track that.
Emily, if we wanted to increase our radiuses, well to septic,
Yep.
have you seen that?
I have not seen that specifically, but I have not seen that specifically, but that's no reason why you couldn't do it. I mean, that's just,
We're about to rewrite our regs.
Yep.
We're getting close to that.
Yep.
And if we did, I'm asking your opinion now.
Yep.
If we had a larger area of well radius to septic, would that make a difference?
it would make a difference. The same way, I mean, I use Rye as an
I
example.
see she's writing this down.
Okay. Any distance. If you think of a septic plume, it's going to sort of go this way. So the farther distance it has to go through more soil, that's better. In my experience, the main push is to get people to understand why they care about pumping their septic tanks and to make it easy for them to learn how to do it if
Well,
they're
you just
not
have to
doing
have it back up on you once to understand, right?
Well, right, and that doesn't happen to everybody, but understanding that there's a link to the quality of the water they're drinking, or in these cases where they did have regulatory changes, that was more of an economic beach closure kind of thing, but it's not just that, it's wells
So
as
when I
well.
sat on our planning board and everything, I see that, the well would be in the front, the septic would be in the back, the house next to it, well would be in the back, septic would be in the front.
Yep.
So when I'm talking about radiuses, I'm not talking about radiuses within lots, I'm talking about radiuses within subdivisions.
Yep.
So that there is enough room between the septic in the back and the well that's in the back of the next house.
Yes.
Are we talking about the same thing?
I think we are, yeah.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
All right, just want to get some clarity.
Yeah,
Thank you.
no, of course. So I think that is actually, oh yeah, and that's just reminding you that's why we care here, because it's not a beach closure or algae bloom kind of problem that you have here, but it still is it's a link. I mean, when you have private wells and septic systems, it's something you want to be taking seriously as sort of what can we do as a town? And then if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer any now, or feel free to reach out once you've seen the report, or if you have any questions at any point.
Questions?
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
If you're required to get a permit to get your septic system, I'm just surprised that there's no records. So
Well, so there's records, there's no electronic records.
So you
That's
have
the
to dig through them
problem.
and-
So this is so the records are paper records at the municipal level right now,
Okay.
which again is not unique. That's how it is everywhere in the state.
we want to get this electronic so it's easier to access.
So this would basically mean if a septic
Excellent.
application came in, that database would get updated, and the town staff that I work with are pretty confident. They're working together to try to put something in place if a permit gets put through, who's going to enter it and how does that get updated?
Excellent.
Anyone else? Thank you, that was great.
All right, Thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman, have we
Yes.
thought about seeing how much it would cost to finish that 5,000 residents?
How much was the grant for?
If you bear with me, Mr. Chairman.
And we can revisit it another time. How much was the grant for? Okay. Thank you. All right, why don't we get that on our radar and continue talking about that?
Because I believe that this type of information will help us
Yeah.
Maybe there's
steer
another-
us in the right direction on what areas of town that, when the time comes, we push water and we push sewer.
See, we'll check on another
I think it's-
grant.
I
We
think
can
it's a
also check to
valuable
see if the
report.
voters want to do something, but let's get this on our radar. And, and continue to track it going forward. Let's make sure we don't lose track of this good information.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next item, order 2023-03, an order relative to expenditure of maintenance trust funds for winter maintenance, which, based on the weather this week, we hope is over.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Town Council. Just wanted to say congratulations to Ron and Ted. It's my first time officially being in front of you, so congratulations and welcome to the Town Council. Yeah, the winter beard is gone, so that means snow is officially over, at least for me. And you're welcome for all the nice weather I had brought in this week to make that official. Just so, for a little bit of history for the new councilors and whatnot, we shifted gears here. This is the second season now where I come in front of the board and ask for allocations instead of them bringing every single invoice in front of you for approval. What we do is three allocations. We take a 50% allocation at the beginning of the season based on a 5-year average, come in when that has expended, and add another 50%. And if we don't use it all, it goes back to the trust fund. And if we exceed it, which we did in this case, such as last year too, we come in and ask for that delta to clean out the season. I will also point out that this year we did go over, we did end up with 68 inches of snow officially in Londonderry, which is a good solid 18 inches above where we've been at for the last couple of years. That last snowstorm pretty much did it for all of us with that 16-inch plus storm. And also you'll see that the monies have gone up as well. I want to say about early January, we had some discussions with the fire chief and the calls that they were experiencing, and they were really kind of struggling with trying to keep up with their parking lots. And they preferred to use their truck too to also go help with their responses and their calls. So they were struggling a little bit to keep their lots open. So we did end up quickly asking our contractor to go ahead and assume the responsibility for those 3 stations. So that's something else that drove the cost up a little bit more this year as well. So the accumulation and the 3 additional lots that they were plowing for us. So this allocation that I'm looking for is for $6,840 for the purpose of paying the remainder of this year's balance of bills.
I'll accept the motion to approve, unless there's any questions, excuse me, I'm sorry, is there any questions? I'll accept the motion to approve 2023 -03.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, and that's one done. 2023-04, Dave.
Okay, thank you. So some time ago, you may recall that we have upgraded the town's building management system here. It was in conjunction with a little situation we had going on at the library. Actually, I had already begun looking into upgrading the building management system that we have here in Town Hall, and whereas it was running on 1990 software. And the software that the library had circa 1986 had actually crashed. Luckily, their vendor at the time had one mothballed somewhere, brought it in and kept them running until we could come before you and kind of do both buildings at the same time, with the concept that we're going to build a single platform where we would create it, get it up and going with Town Hall and the Leach Library, and then we could build upon that. We also know that we don't like to have proprietary issues, and so I began the search and discussion with E&E Systems, and Paul O'Neill and Andy Gamache is here with me tonight. And just to brief you on their company, they actually did the install in software for Town Hall. Ironically enough, when I had a problem here, I had called I called them, and Paul was nice enough to come out and was kind of shocked a little bit that it was still up and running and running well. So, but nonetheless, we could have, we were potentially facing issues going forward, similar to what they experienced at the Leach Library. And so we started on this venture, and their company has been both professional and quite impressive, to say the least, at what they've done for the town of Londonderry. A lot of things at no cost. They've kept costs down. We've actually now secured them as our maintenance contractors for both this building and the Leach Library, and saved several thousands of dollars in our maintenance contracts as well. As they were setting these things up, they found some system errors and things that were going on that they rectified for us very quickly and efficiently. They do have many of the state bids in the state system, the courthouses and whatnot, in Portsmouth. And they're gonna, Paul's gonna come up, and he's just gonna basically quickly walk you through the town hall and the Leach Library, what we've built so far. And then he'll show what I'd like to do in moving forward for the 3 firehouses to bring onto this platform, and he's going to show us where Portsmouth is at, so you kind of see what it is we're driving at and how the system can look. So with that, Paul O'Neill.
Thank you, Dave. And thank you everyone for having me here tonight. So just just to give you a broader brush of what we do, we're an HVAC contractor as well as building automation contractor. The systems that we install are energy management systems. They're intended to save energy in the way we operate our buildings by keeping them comfortable and so forth. For example, in many areas we deploy CO2 sensors to measure the amount of CO2 in a space like this, and then we do demand ventilation based on how many people are breathing in the room. That's just an example. Many other strategies like that. So these building automation systems are designed to reduce the operating cost of a facility's utilities by at least 25%. The industry standard is 30%, but I like to be a little bit more conservative. So when we deploy a system into a facility, we typically see those types of savings when they don't have one. Similarly, the system, if it's not used properly or if it's antiquated, some of those savings start to degrade over time. What we found with Leach Library and in the town hall here, they were older systems, and they weren't really utilized very well because the software, being from the mid 90s or actually early 90s over at Leach Library to the early 2000s here in this building, the software was very archaic and difficult to operate. Technology's come along very quickly in the industry, so what we have here now operating these 2 buildings is a state-of-the-art system that's really easy to operate. It's pretty much automatic. Dave sets the schedules, he sets everything, and it just does its thing in the background. In addition to that, it also notifies Dave and town staff if there's any problem with the facility. So if a boiler goes down, they get an alarm right away and can respond to that before there's a danger to the building or if it frees up or anything like that. So there's a great deal of benefits that you get from that. Whenever we're able to deploy a system like this in a municipality like we have at the city of Portsmouth, we're taking, when we encompass all of the buildings into the system, there's an economy of scale, so to speak. So we can have the buildings operate on an individual basis, so there can be an individual operator that can see things and make adjustments. But in addition to that, there's global set points that can be managed by a director of public works if he wants to, if there's a snow day or if there's an event where the buildings are going to be unoccupied, he can just click one button and make that town-wide. Those are types of things that really save energy over the long haul. We do that in schools a lot with a snow day button. If a school is going to be unoccupied for a day, custodian or the facilities manager realizes that, he just clicks a button from his smartphone and off he goes. So here at the town of Londonderry, we have the town hall and Leach Library, and it's just a quick click right into the facility. At a glance, we can take a look at the floor plans and in real time drill right down and see what all the space temperatures are. In addition to that, we want to be economical of what our set points are, and while we're still keeping people comfortable, And Dave's pretty good at managing that. He's really hawkish about this. I'm tend to be a little bit more keeping people comfortable. He's like, what's going to save money? And that can be done globally so that folks aren't being willy-nilly with their own thermostats. Dave gives people a range, a comfort range, where they can adjust it up to a threshold or down to a threshold, thus saving energy in the town. In addition to that, if anything goes awry in any of these spaces, we'll get an alarm right away. So, and everything is adjustable for the operators to see and understand. And alarms, there's no alarms in the system right now, but if there were any alarms, they would pop right up here and be flashing on the screen, and also be notified via text and email.
And just if I can interrupt for 1 second, we've already had a couple of experiences where the notification process to me after hours and whatnot has been absolutely perfect in nature. There was a late Friday evening, almost after the system came online, and a blower unit in the attic started to seize up. And luckily enough, it was around 6 o'clock. We still had a staff member. I think she might even still be here now. She might have went home. But she was here working late, and so she could smell something. And almost as I was talking to her, she had called me. I got an alarm on my phone. And so there was a blower unit that was seizing up in the attic. So I called Paul. He logged in from home or whatnot. I drove down here, and he got it to shut down remotely. And when I got here, went in the attic and confirmed that was the error, the actual error, locked it out, tagged it out, and then Paul was able to schedule them, being the maintenance contractor, was able to have them here first thing Monday morning to come down, change that out, and take care of it. So the importance of that is that there wasn't something wrong going on in the building all weekend long. God forbid it could have led to something more catastrophic, a fire or something to that nature. And then Monday morning, they were here hitting the ground running, got the unit out, put the new motor in, and everything was taken care of. So we didn't come into Monday morning and it's a horror show here, and we got an issue going on and the building's full of smoke or some sort of scent and whatnot. So that's the value that we're getting out of this type of a system, so that it's readily available to access it from anywhere. So.
Interestingly enough, we got a complaint today from the Leach Library saying they were a little bit warm. And I was actually, once we jumped online and took a look at it, I was actually pleased with what I saw. We've been very conservative with our set points at the library in order to save energy. So our active cooling set point is 75 and heating set point is 73. So that means we don't bring the cooling on unless the space temperature goes above 75. They're feeling a little bit uncomfortable as the sun's shining in, and we're starting to getting into a little bit more warmer weather. But the good news is we can adjust that just a little bit down to give them a little bit more comfort while still saving energy. The old ways was somebody would walk, if they felt a little warm, they'd go to the thermostat and they'd crank it down to 60 degrees and run the air conditioning, at full tilt all day. So these are good things, and somebody that operates a building like Dave on a regular basis gets to know these little dynamics and nuances, and that's where you really see the savings in the operation of the building. And just to give you an idea too, what we can do is, whoops, we get disconnected. We'll jump on to Portsmouth, City of Portsmouth. I can't remember how many buildings we have, Andy, probably 12 or 14 buildings in the City of Portsmouth, all networked into one system. And I do want to stress that this is an open protocol system, so you're open to multiple vendors. We want to do really well and hope you choose to work with us, but you're not tied into us. You can have multiple vendors on it. It's BACnet, open protocol system, so it's an industry standard. So. Just really quickly here. I'll give you a flavor for what we're hoping to grow here with the town of Londonderry. So this would be the City of Portsmouth, and you can see we do tend to their fire stations as well. And currently, your 3 fire stations in Londonderry do have building automation systems, but they're really old. One of the systems I installed when I first started in business in 2003. I believe it was in 2002 or 2003. And the technologies, it's proprietary and it's just old. It's time for an upgrade.
Yeah, that's a South Station.
Yep, the South Station. You know, it's still operational, so you've gotten your money's worth out of it. I'll put it that way. But bringing the building into a centralized system like this gives the town a much better opportunity for managing the buildings properly, and addressing issues before they really become issues. So, and just looking at the fire station again, all the space temperatures are all identified, and if you had a question about anything, you can drill right down into a zone and see exactly what's going on. Or right into big mechanical systems. This happens to be a heat pump loop at the library, Portsmouth City Library, and currently it's running a little bit warm. The cooling tower hasn't been brought online 100% for the summer, but that's actually being addressed tomorrow morning. So, and every building gets a floor plan, and so a building operator, in this particular case at the library in Portsmouth, the library director is an older woman that really has no background in HVAC, but she operates her building very carefully and very diligently, and she keeps her set points right where they need to be.
She has artifacts in the basement too, right? At this one, is this the one that you were telling me about?
On the second floor, she actually has, there's one room that's going to be really cold, 65.2 degrees. This room is kept cold on purpose because of the artifacts that they keep in there, some of the ancient manifests and everything from the city of Portsmouth from years and years and years ago. So they keep it at a really cool temperature to maintain lower humidity, so that the paperwork doesn't degrade. And if anything goes out of spec in that room, bells and whistles go off all over the city. Everybody knows about it. I'm the first in line, but we all know about it if anything happens in that room. So that's just to give you an idea of what what Dave's insight is to build here in the city of town of Londonderry.
And so with that, again, the 3 firehouses. So it's important to understand too that the building systems that they have too are not online and available like this. They're in-house. The North Station and the Central Fire Station, those 2 are on their servers. They're independent of one another, so they're not on the same platform. They don't have remote capability. I believe Central Fire will send out an alarm if there is an issue over there. But again, you got to respond and then log in and find out what's going on and whatnot. It doesn't have this type of capacity. And so where we've already invested and got the platform up, I asked Paul and his colleague to evaluate them, take a look at them, and see what it would take in order to bring these 3 firehouses up to what we have for a standard here, and continue to build the platform out. As far as the energy savings, just actually looked at the budget going into Q4 last week, and we are seeing a pretty good savings in electricity. I know it was a relatively warm winter too. We did have a couple of cold snaps there. In fact, to that point, the Leach Library, as some of you may remember, they have a fire sprinkler head that burst twice in one of the alcoves, if you will, on the north side of the building. And so, and again, this speaks to Paul and his team and how good of a job they do. They listen to other concerns we have within the building. And so he said, in fact, you can bring up those sensors, yeah. So he said, well, you know what? We can put sensors up there so that if that area gets to a certain point and it gets really cold, we're going to know it, and you're going to know you need to go in and try and do something to address that before we have another flood inside the building. So if you recall, we had that real cold snap and it was down to 20-something below for a few hours. And we use these 2 sensors up in the ceiling near these pipes to alert us and alarm us what was going on and how quickly and rapidly it was dropping in temperature. And we got heat lamps up there. We were doing everything that we could. we avoided it for the night, and we're actually going to make some more permanent solutions to actually just relocate those pipes outside that area, so we don't have to do it again. But to Paul's credit and whatnot, they have put these up there, and we were able to watch them all winter, and they were invaluable when we got into that cold snap. So, but at any rate, so what I had before you was the proposal from them for the allocation to bring the 3 buildings online. And obviously the cost, you can see the central fire station doesn't take much due to its newness and age and whatnot for $7,510. South Station is $10,825, and the North Station is $16,265. There's more components. That's kind of why another reason why I wanted Paul to kind of explain some of the differences in the pricing between why North Station was so much in. And actually, again, looking at the system too, Paul brought to our attention that the boilers down there are ones that in the industry when they were put in are kind of problematic and might be getting close to end of term here too. So it's something to keep an eye on. All the more reason to have a system like this in place with the type of boilers that are in down there. But maybe Paul, just touch base a little bit on the difference between the pricing on the 3, if you will. I had written down some of my notes here, but for North Station in particular.
Central Station was,
Right, this one here. I'm sorry, this is North Station. So yeah, it has eight controllers there. So
yeah, so Central Station was the lowest cost one. It's the newest building, and there are a lot of the components in the building we can reuse and migrate into this system. So it would be a little bit more of an integration. Still fully functional, but it's actually the lowest cost. North Station, the system that's there is a very proprietary old system. In fact, I think it may be the last one in New Hampshire I haven't seen one in years.
That station was built with a Leeds grant.
yeah.
Yeah. And so it's all the controls have to be completely removed and replaced. We can reuse a little bit of the wiring that's in the building, but pretty much everything has to be replaced, from scratch, and then integrated into the system. But with a system of that age, they're electronic components. They're like mini computers, building automation systems, and like any computer, after 4 or 5 years, you're kind of it's getting slow, and you're kind of looking at having upgrades. Now you have a 20-year-old control system that's really antiquated. So that's why that station was the highest cost. And the South Station is smaller building. The controls do need to be replaced. It is a proprietary system, but it's a smaller building, so it's a little bit less cost there. But all the functions and features that you've seen here and been enjoying at Town Hall and Leach Library, all those features would be incorporated into all 3 fire stations. So it would be a seamless installation. And when we did the initial platform installation, through Dave's insight, we made it expandable, so there's no limit. Adding these in it's very economical.
Questions? Yes, question. When did we start looking at using this at the library?
When did we put this online?
Yeah.
It's been less than a year now. It was just at the end of summer.
Okay. Yeah, I was at the library last Tuesday, and it was boiling hot in the basement where there was a reading room going on for children that day, and it was boiling. Like everyone was like dying.
In the meeting room in the basement?
Yeah.
Can you bring up a trend log?
Yeah, sure can.
And to your point, and again, it's great to have Paul and them have their team available and accessible to us too. This is the most difficult time of year. Last Friday, I was at my son's baseball game, not in town, but it's probably the coldest game I've ever been at in my life. And now we're going to enjoy this Friday, 80-something degree weather. And so this is where we can save. This time of year and in the fall is when we can save, because people aren't going over. They can play with the thermostat all they want, but they can set it to 78 if they want. The computer's not going to let it go past what our parameters are, no higher than 75, no lower than 68. So they can't turn it down to 60 in July. They can't turn it up to 78 in the winter and whatnot. It'll say it on the screen, but the computer is only going to It might give them some mental.
69. Get a sweater.
So here's the answer to your question.
Yeah, it's pretty hot in there.
It's, the set points are a little high. So your heating set point is the light blue line. The dark blue is your actual room temperature. So you can see the room temperatures, bouncing in between the heating and the cooling set points.
Yep.
So what I would suggest is let's lower those set points down and save some energy. The library does have access to those set points, but I'll show you how quick and easy it is just to make a couple of set point changes right here. Let's lower this down to 72 and 72. That'll effectively lower the heating set point down to 71 and the cooling set point to 73. There's really nothing wrong with the system. I can see why you would have been a little bit warm in there. It's just where somebody had put the set point.
Yeah, certainly.
So easy to troubleshoot and very easy to correct.
Wonderful.
And that saves us time on the staff side of things. It saves us time because we get that all the time, is that, they find out, well, it was last Friday or, it was last week and we didn't have that ability, and now we have all the data and the trend logs all get built in.
That's
It's easy to go back and
Will we be looking at this for the police station eventually?
So eventually that is the idea. But this was the first phase. This is the second phase. And ironically enough, I was at the police station today because Happy Easter yesterday morning, we had a leak in the fire suppression system over there. And it was spraying right on the controllers of their units over there. One of them's on the fritz now. But it's something that when I was talking to the building manager over there, JR was telling me that even the mechanical company that they have over that is telling them that those are on the way out anyway. They're very old and, they're original to the building and whatnot. And again, it's just another updated thing that needs to be taken care of. So to answer your point about the police station, that is something that I've got my eye on. We're thinking about that. They ran into proprietary issues over there. They're beyond that hurdle. But it is something that I would like to eventually in the future migrate to the platform. It'd be the last sophisticated, heating, cooling system type of building in town that I think we need to move to this system. So.
Wonderful. I think it'll be interesting to track the potential savings over time with this.
We don't quite have a year in yet, so that's why it's hard for me to really judge. But from what I looked at in the budget last week, going into the last quarter of the year, we're way ahead of the curve with saving on energy.
Wonderful.
So,
All right, any other questions? I'll accept the motion to approve Order 2023-04.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Thank you, gentlemen.
thank you. Thank you.
Steve, go ahead and get set up and get started. I'm just gonna step out for 1 second, but you can go ahead and get started.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Good evening, Chairman Pro Tem Franz, and members of the council. My name is Steve Hamilton, and I'm the assessor for the town by contract. It's good to be here this evening. I made a presentation of this nature, I believe it was earlier in 2022. On a regular basis, we want to make sure that we maintain and manage the asset and income limits for the exemptions that can be granted to the elderly and the disabled who meet those means-tested thresholds. And so the last time that this was adjusted was in 2020, in the wake of a revaluation that occurred in 2019. And so I've done an analysis that will help to define what the parameters that are being employed in a peer set of communities are, and also what a reasonable adjustment for cost of living and CPI adjustments might be. At the outset, I'd say that embarrassingly, there's a typo on the memo that describes it. Under the current category of assets, the limit is not 167,000, it's 137,000, which follows the text of the memo and the analysis on the following page, but I wanted to point that out to you right now. You can see that the peer set median income for a single individual is at $45,000, and that's more than the current limit for a single income here in Londonderry, which is set at $40,800. Similarly, for a married couple, the income limit is set at $50,300, while the peer set is at $55,000. And so that correlates pretty closely with the analysis of what happens when you apply the CPI trending for the period of time from 2019 to the present, and also looking at what's happened with cost of living increases for Social Security income. Social Security income has to be considered because we look at the income from all sources, not simply what a person would pay taxes on in a 1040, but the law requires all sources of income to be considered. And that asset limit at 137,000 by statute, that does not include the equity that a person may have in their home. So that is an exempted amount of assets. So this would be anything in addition to that equity. They may have automobiles or furnishings or other personalty, but also investments that may help them to generate income. The amount of assets that are allowed at 137,000 is quite a bit lower than the peer median set. And so I think that two pieces of information are important to understand in that. In processing the applications that we receive, we very rarely have any individuals that will not qualify because they have too many assets. Usually qualification comes down to the amount of income that they have. And we've found that the people who do meet those thresholds for income very rarely have that high of an asset limit. The second thing I'd say is that it's kind of a very rough statute. It doesn't allow for a distinction to be made between an individual that may be receiving a pension and an income stream from that pension, and an individual who might have investments that they're receiving a stream of income from. It treats them differently because of the asset limit. And I think that it's probably from the current $137,000 limit. I think that some larger increase than what a CPI adjustment might indicate would be appropriate, and I don't think it would create a larger or a significantly greater number of individuals that would qualify. And that's where we need to try and strike a balance point, because as we increase the thresholds, we risk that a larger number of people would be able to qualify, and that would have an impact on the tax rate because these exemptions are granted not with magic money, but with taxpayer money, and the amount of taxpayer money that gets exempted through these programs has to be made up through the tax rate by everybody else. But in a nutshell, that's what this analysis shows. I also included the current amount of the exemption by category, not for consideration for today, but rather for consideration later in the year. We're undergoing evaluation update, and that's really the very appropriate time to think about making those kinds of adjustments to the benefit amount. But right now, I think is a timely issue to consider adjusting those threshold amounts.
Okay, questions? I have several, so Steve, a couple of quick things. One, you just mentioned we're gonna go through a reval. If my memory serves me correctly, we have not asked for the reval to come before the council before it goes to the public in the past. I would like to ask the council if they would entertain seeing a presentation of what their reval is gonna look like before it goes to the public.
Yes.
Yes.
And I'm very happy to come before you and share with you what the results will be in a preliminary
I think we want some input.
analysis.
Just based on what I'm hearing from people in the community and the way that the real estate market is fluctuating, I think, one, we need to be better educated. And two is I think we'll have we might have some information that we're hearing from residents that we want to share with you before we go to a final. Make sense?
Well, and we hear a lot from the market. I mean, obviously, it's the participants, the buyers and sellers, that really inform the process of how are the valuations standing up. But you know, we want to have good visibility on this whole process and have an opportunity for everybody to bring information into the process as well.
That'd be great, because in the last process, we had to go out and do some homework afterwards, and I guess I'd like to avoid that homework going forward by just doing a little bit more due diligence and for us being a little bit more engaged.
Yeah.
So just pointing that out. I'm happy to see the part about the Social Security increase. So here's my big question for you. You know, I keep looking at the 80+ on Wyndham. And I was in the state of Delaware recently, and I got familiar with what some of their tax laws are and why people are retiring to Delaware. I think there reaches a certain point in which a community needs to take care of their more elderly, and they should be respected citizens. I mean, 85 comes to mind with me. I mean, I would like, and I know I'm creating work. I would like to ask the council if we could evaluate looking at if we were to do something like Wyndham is doing at 85+, what would that mean? And I don't know the answer to that, and I'm not looking to bring me an answer tonight.
Right.
And you may come back to us after we ask you to look at it and say, this isn't worth looking at.
Right.
But and maybe Wyndham has the answer already.
Well, and what I can say is that before we get too far into that analysis, the age categories are defined in statute, and we're limited to 65 to 74, 75 to 79, and then 80 years plus. We
Maybe
don't
my
have,
state rep over here can get me an 85.
well, so that will be wonderful once we get to that point, but we're
But you
kind of.
understand what I'm saying?
I understand what you're saying, but we're kind of locked in. But one thing and I'm happy to see if we can tease that information out, because we do have, in 2021, there may be some adjustment to this. We had 79 people in that category, that age category of 80+, and we can try and figure out how many would be in the 85+.
Here's what I'm trying to figure out is we've got over 1,000 homes. Wyndham doesn't have over 1,000 homes that are 55+, but we've got over 1,000. I mean, and at some point, I think you have to, you know, give back to those people who gave all those years. Help me understand what the law says is, if we do something on the town side and say that we're going to do this reduction, does it affect their school taxes too?
It affects all taxes. So this is an exemption of the value. So it's a lower tax bill by lowering the entire value all the way across the board.
I'd like to see if there's something, once someone reaches that age, I think they deserve more. At least I'd like to find out what that means. And if the council's okay with that,
Yeah.
I'd like to find out what that means.
Yep.
I mean, Wyndham's doing it, maybe they have the answer already. Maybe they can just tell you and you can tell us.
Well, I mean, Wyndham just simply says for the 80+ category, the entire value of the home is exempted.
I understand. I just don't
And
know what that means.
And that impacts 21 people, 21 households in Wyndham. where there are 79 households in that category here. So there's a different scale of the impact. And we can kind of show you what that would mean.
I would be interested in knowing what that means. Anything else from the council?
I was noticing, looking at his chart from the various different towns, how wide-ranging the amount of monies there are, certainly. We seem to be certainly more the higher end with Nashua and Portsmouth. I just want to make sure, do we want to stay at the values that we're at?
Well, I think that's part of what's going to come back in this.
Right. And so what I would say is, if I were in the TV business, I'd say tune in next time, because we'll be making a presentation about what those benefit categories mean and how much the value should be by those categories.
Because that is something I hear from those folks who are in that classification, is that, I'm paying all my life. Can you help me out? So,
Mr.
that'd be
Chairman,
interesting knowing.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, just inquire of Mr. Hamilton what the time frame would need to be to make this first step 1 change, and then what the time frame would be to make the step 2 change.
Well, we'd like to get the changes to the exemption threshold value, so the income and asset limits changed as soon as is practical. So we'd like to come back to the next meeting with an ordinance to adjust those exemption amounts. The dollar amount of the benefit is something that will need to be ironed out before the fall. So we will have the time to go through the presentation of the results of the revaluation and talk about what the impact is on those categories of taxable property.
And Mr. Chairman, just so that our guidance is clear, what I think I heard was satisfaction with the SSI COLA adjusted numbers. That maybe is a starting point for your consideration. And then looking at that 80 plus category to see what we could do with that. Do I have that right, or?
I believe so.
Mr. Chair, one last question. This revaluation, will it just be residential or commercial as well?
The revaluation is for all property.
Wonderful. Because I know some years we've offset them, so.
Yeah, too many times we've come back afterwards and, we were not engaged, and I would appreciate it if we could be more engaged. Anything else? Thanks, Steve.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
Next item, Resolution 2023-07. This is a resolution creating the Londonderry Pickleball Task Force.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we've batted this one around earlier in the meeting, but what I can tell you is that there's kind of a plain vanilla recipe for how to create a task force, and this follows that mold. I think the goal, certainly that I heard from the council and that I adopted in drafting the committee charge and the ordinance, was to leave as much room as possible for the task force to define goals and options and where it would like to go, without confining their work too much. And that's what you have in front of you.
Yeah, I think the only thing I'd like, I'm sorry, does anyone have any questions? I think I'd like to change the duties and responsibilities on the date to something more like September,
Certainly,
so we can get something before budget season,
certainly, Mr. Chairman.
if they decide that this is a path they want to go down. And to be very clear to the council again, this does not mean we're building pickleball courts in town. This does not mean we're doing anything. This means we're establishing a task force to look into it. Yes.
Mr. Chair, just for perception purposes, would you be any objection to starting it after July 1st?
Well, I'm
Just 'cause I-
that may take care of itself.
I just
mean,
think that the perception in town is that we're doing something we're not supposed to be doing, so.
Well, perception in this case is not reality.
Okay,
We're
I'm
not
just-
doing something that we're not supposed to be doing. I would say that this very well may take care of itself. Let's say, for example, we adopt this tonight. And let's say she advertises this, and let's say that we probably have until the end of May that we interview people. And that we may not even appoint people until June. And they may not even have their first meeting until July. I mean, it takes that long to put a task force together. So, I mean, you can certainly look at it and saying it won't start after July 1st, but as it stands now, it likely won't start until after July 1st.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, but we can certainly make it a formality if that's what the council wants to do. Okay. Any other questions regarding the Londonderry Pickleball Task Force? Any other changes? All right, seeing none, I'll accept a motion to approve Resolution 2023-07.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. And we will start working on the pickleball task force, which will probably not have its first meeting until after school's out sometime, or maybe early July. Okay. Next item. I have ordinance 2023-02, an amendment to the zoning ordinance relative to the rezoning of map 15, lot 26. This is a first reading, so for those of you who have not participated in the town council meeting where we have a first reading, generally what we do is we waive the first reading. It's just a notification to the public that this is coming. And then we actually do read the entire ordinance at the next meeting, and then we get into the entire ordinance. So if the council is okay with that, we'll go ahead and accept a motion to waive first reading of ordinance 2023-02.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative, first reading is waived. Londonderry LPD requests ARPA funding. Would that be you, Chief?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'll just very briefly introduce this and then let the folks who know a lot more about this than me take over. And just to flag it, there is a request on here for the dispatch center. We're going to be asking for some support for some work that needs to be done there.
Did I miss something? Oh, no, it's part of this.
That's part of
Okay.
this. We'd like to table until the next meeting. The focus that I think LPD has is its drone unit, which for what it's worth, from my standpoint, is a large success. Not only do they rescue lost children, animals, but they support our special operators and keep them out of harm's way. And I'd ask that the council support LPD in doing all three of those things.
Chief, floor is yours.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. I'd like to make just a brief pitch to you, gentlemen, this evening as to what we're looking to spend some funds on. As some of you may know, as the town manager pointed out, we've had a drone program in the works since 2018-ish at Londonderry PD. We currently have 3 drones on staff, if you would, different variations for different functionalities of the drone usage. Some of you may have seen the information I printed out here today. A couple of these drones, the smaller ones, if you want to call them, are outdated. They're getting more expensive to maintain. Battery life, for example, it's $1,000 for a battery, and we've gone through those several times. The Brink that we came before in 2018 and purchased, or 2020, was a much larger scale, and it had a lot more capabilities and options. This Brink Loomer, or Lemur, however you want to pronounce it, is the new updated version of our old one. And much like everything else we come to you folks for is equipment, training, and updating the resources that are available to our community. As the town manager pointed out, these things are time-saving. They're really useful for officer safety. We've used them for suicidal and barricaded subjects. We've used them to go through. These new ones will do real-time room mapping capabilities too. So that's very useful for even the town here, for buildings as such. I won't get into all the uses that we've had for you folks and bore you, but the new one, it'll have 4K day-night night vision and thermal sensors. We will to mesh our network capabilities with the other drone. We will be able to, if there were a live scene and we needed to log in as the command staff, we would be able to jump on our phone at the time and see a live feed if needed. Obstacle awareness, this one will be able to sense issues that are coming up, things that are in the way. And not that it matters, but there is some other neat little functions that the drone guys are head over heels for. To me, I don't know. I don't know a lot about those, but I tell you what, they're telling me that this is the real deal and we'll benefit from it. And as I said to you folks before, I wouldn't come to you folks for anything that I didn't think was a want. This is a need. I think it's an important tool that we can utilize quite often, as we have been for the last several years.
Please, questions?
A couple things I think is pretty cool is that I reviewing the literature you sent out earlier, if a combatant strikes the drone or whatever and it's doing the room mapping, it can give you, I like the full layout that it's like, hey, here's a room, you can breach here for safety because there's no combatants here or whatever, but if a combatant strikes it or whatever, it is protected. It can do a turtle mode or whatever. It
Yeah,
can
that
flip
was what it
back
was called.
over.
Yeah.
It can break through a window.
Yeah.
Very, very neat technology and in all efforts to keep our residents and safe. So thank you.
Thanks for bringing that, Councilor Franz. One of the other great things we used this for last year was during Old Home Days. As we all knew, we had some added concerns during the whole Old Home Day festivities. We were able to use this drone to clear the road, do rooftop clearances and things like that. So multi-use.
Thank you.
Yes.
I don't think I actually got the literature on this, but how physically big are these items? I know some drones can be quite big and some
Yeah,
can
so-
be tiny, so.
Great question. So we have some smaller ones, but this one's probably about as large as that seal, maybe, give or take. My eyes aren't the best, but I'd probably guess that's 18 inches, 20.
Very nice.
So we'll be able to use these for like Millennium Running at night, football games at night, fireworks at night, stuff like that is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
So especially the football games when we have 10,000 people over there or whatever
That
they
would
get
be
for
pretty
the,
cool to
whatever
live
they get
stream
for
a
the
football
Pinkerton
game.
games. I mean, I don't know if they get 10 or 5. I don't know what that number is, but it's a big number. Okay, anything else? So I think you're just looking for a consensus to move forward
Correct.
tonight, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds like a yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And lastly, as the town manager pointed out, the dispatch remodel, we had a meeting today, and because of me, I decided to change the layout. So they're gonna give us a new layout design, and we'll present that to you in a much better packet than some paper. We'll send it to you as a PowerPoint so you guys can all see what we're talking about. All right?
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you. Thanks, Chief. National opioid settlement, Mike.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. This one's relatively straightforward. The council may recall that we had litigation pending against the opioid manufacturers. That litigation was settled, I don't know, in the last 6 months or so. And Londonderry has received approximately $100,000 from that settlement that needs to be used for opioid abatement and mitigation purposes. New Hampshire sued the distributors, which include some well-known pharmacies that New Hampshire alleges had a role in fueling the opioid crisis. Whereas previously Londonderry had filed suit and had its own litigation pending alongside New Hampshire's against the manufacturers. Londonderry does not have its own litigation pending against the distributors. The state of New Hampshire is doing that, and Londonderry is eligible to participate in any settlement that's reached. New Hampshire has reached a $100 million settlement with these entities, The Attorney General's office is asking Londonderry to sign on. Our outside opioid counsel is recommending that we do so, and so is our local counsel. And so I'm looking for the council's consensus to do that.
Yes.
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 All set?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Hey, Mr. Chairman, on the $100,000 that we got for the settlement, do we, I'd like to know where that's gonna go.
Yes, so that's not going to go anywhere without the council's input.
check.
It will be brought before the council. There are some ideas, I've met with some groups to try to give the council some ideas when we do bring that forward. But, there's a number of different things that you can do, but it does have to be related to the opioid crisis and the results of it. But it's certainly my intention to bring that back to the council.
Thank you.
All right, so my next item is an appointment of Kayla Chase as the deputy tax collector. Are there any questions? If not, I'll accept the motion to appoint Kayla as the deputy tax
So
collector.
moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative. Kayla, see the clerk to be sworn in. I have no old business. I'm looking for a motion to approve the March 23rd minutes as presented in our packet.
I have an amendment, Mr. Chair. On line number 214, it says, if you recall, it was the approval of the previous minutes. It says no vote under Counselors Dunn and Combs. I believe it should be abstained.
So I'll accept a motion to approve the minutes as amended.
I'll second that.
I need a motion first.
Oh, sorry. So moved on his motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Minutes are approved as amended. Do I have any liaison reports?
Yes, sir. I have 3 of them, actually.
Alrighty, sir.
Budget Committee had an organizational meeting. Went very well. Patrick Cassidy was elected the chair, and Joseph Gagnon was elected the vice chair. The Utility Committee also had an organizational meeting. Lynn Wiles was elected the chair, and Martha Smith was elected vice chair. The Solid Waste Committee also had an organizational meeting. Lynn Wiles was elected the chair, and Joy Miller was elected the vice chair. And all meetings went well.
Anyone else?
I have a school board liaison update. Same thing, they had their reorganization. Mr. Slater was elected as chair. Sarah Laughlin was vice chair, and they welcomed their new member, Tim Porter. Also, the chair made a decision to move public comments to the beginning of their meeting. Additionally, there was the discussion regarding the termination of a contract with a business consultant, as the current business agent felt they could handle the workload right now. And then lastly, April 6th, they had 3 finalists for the Londonderry High School principal position. All 3 were very outstanding. It was a great opportunity for the public to interact and be part of that process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I have one liaison report. I met with the Londonderry Arts Council. Conversations about traffic and parking. They're getting ready for what will be a very exciting season. I personally have follow-ups with the police department, alert, and the fire department with regards to that event. Based on their schedule, they'll be starting right around the time that school wraps up and going right through to Old Home Day. And for some of these events, they're expecting anywhere between 800 and 900 people. So looking forward to another successful season with the Concerts on the Common. Town manager, oh, yes.
Planning board, last week, we had a few plans that were approved. One for a commercial industrial warehousing building up near Jack's Abbey's Road. Residential project that was also approved. And then this coming Wednesday, we have Woodmont Commons providing their update for their yearly update. So I think that'll be exciting to see.
Town manager report.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would like to draw attention to this evening is that we do have several board openings. There's one 2-year position open on the Budget Committee to fill Councilor Dunn's seat, which he vacated when he was sworn in as a town councilor. There are 2 trustee of the trust fund positions, each to fill the remainder of terms, 2 terms, and an alternate on the planning board. So I would encourage everybody to check that out on the website. It's on Facebook as well, and to get in touch with Kirby Brown if you want to file an application.
All right, so our next town council meeting is on April 24th, 2023. And just one final word here tonight. This is a great community. I used to talk with Bill Hart all the time about what a great community this is and how we try to protect it at all times. And the people who come up here and they give their time and they volunteer on the boards and do all the hard work behind the scenes, the employees from all areas in the town all care about the town. I think it's terrible that, it's very apparent. I have my haters and my naysayers, and they have a lot to say about it. They believe we're corrupt. They believe we're stealing. Believe there's a conflict of interest. They believe that all these things are happening. Folks, this isn't an easy job. And these things aren't happening. People give their time. This is a volunteer position. And we're trying to do our best job with the best things we can, within the limits that we have, with the dollars we have, and within the limits of the law. And you want to know what? People make mistakes. We're human beings. But we try to correct those mistakes. We try to do the right thing. We always try to do the right thing. Frankly, what's going on, not only here in Londonderry, but in other places is you keep questioning that everyone is doing something wrong because they don't agree with you. You know what? Sometimes we're not going to agree. But what we can agree about is that this is a great community and it's worth protecting. So with that, I'll accept the motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Chair votes affirmative.